Mhm. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear United Nations partners, colleagues, and participants from all over the world. My name is Meral Guzel, and I'm managing the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator initiatives. It's my pleasure to open this special event today, and thank you very much all for joining us. I would like to just go over a very super quick housekeeping rules. This is a webinar where all attendees join in listening mode. We don't have a Q&A session, unfortunately, but we are happy to receive your questions. And if you have any, I'm glad to answer after the event. And all speakers and registrants will receive the recording link after the event. I just want to talk very shortly about Women Entrepreneurship Accelerator, or WEA as acronym. This is a multi-partnership initiative on women's entrepreneurship established by 6 UN agencies, namely International Labour Organization, International Trade Center, International Telecommunication Union, United Nations Development Programme, United Nations Global Compact, and UN Women, and Mary Kay. Our mission is to create an enabling ecosystem for women entrepreneurs around the world. Today, with our partners, we will first discuss the critical importance of women entrepreneurship as one of the key drivers to tackle the climate change, and then feature ways of addressing gender parity in climate entrepreneurship. At the second session, we will be very glad to feature ways WEA supports entrepreneurship. WEA is a great example of the transformational power of a multi-stakeholder partnership. We aim to build together an ecosystem for women's economic empowerment that fosters growth, sustainability, and resilience for women entrepreneurs. When I say we, I mean the WEA global team. It is through this global team that we untap the potential of women entrepreneurs. And here, I would like to recognize all my wonderful colleagues with whom I have the pleasure to work together and collaborate the results of our initiative. And I would like to say you all thank you for your partnership. Now, I am delighted to introduce Deborah Gibbons for the opening remarks. As the Chief Operating Officer of Mary Kay Global, Deb Gibbons leads the global supply chain and research and development of the organization. She also oversees the finance, public affairs, diversity and inclusion, and strategic planning divisions. She is passionate about continuing the company's 58-year legacy of providing business opportunities for millions of women around the world. Over to you, Deb.
Thank you, Meral. Distinguished United Nations partners, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to open this pivotal event on women's entrepreneurship and climate change. Our timing, just following International Women's Day, is perfect. It gives us an opportunity to highlight and advocate for the vital contributions women entrepreneurs are making to address the risks posed by a changing climate, to take stock of the challenges, to identify opportunities, and to keep moving the needle and creating true systemic change for women. As the founding partner of the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator, or WEA, Mary Kay has over a half-century commitment to empowering women entrepreneurs around the world. We also have a long-standing commitment in supporting climate action. We see the intersections between these as critical to achieving our global goals. We know there can be no climate justice without gender equality. Aligned with the SDGs, our corporate sustainability strategy encompasses 5 pillars through 15 commitments across economic, environmental, and societal action to be achieved by 2030. In line with Mary Kay's mission, we've titled our corporate CSR strategy, Enriching Lives Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. Therefore, the objectives of today's event is situated in the nexus of entrepreneurship and gender equality, sustainability, and climate action really resonate here at Mary Kay. Mary Kay is also a commitment maker to the Generation Equality Forum's Action Coalition on Economic Justice and Rights and Feminist Action for Climate Justice, 2 key global partnerships to drive action and investment in women's entrepreneurship and the green economy. I'm so very proud to highlight that Mary Kay supports leaders through partnerships advancing gender equality and climate all around the world. We know the challenges are great and demand integrated strategies and collective action. The most recent assessment report released by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is a stark reminder that if we're truly to address the impacts and risks posed by climate change, we can no longer continue to exclude half of humanity. Climate change is not gender neutral, but women and girls are paying the heaviest price. Their heightened vulnerability is a direct consequence of gender inequalities in the political, social, cultural, and economic fabric of societies in which they live. Dominance in sectors most vulnerable to the shocks mean that women are particularly impacted by climate change. Similarly, micro, small, and medium enterprises in which women dominate are less able to withstand fallout from climate change. Women also tend to be excluded from political, community, and household decision-making processes that affect them directly. We know that women entrepreneurs have historically faced many obstacles, including lack of access to capital on both domestic and international markets, fewer entrepreneurship networks compared to men, and policies that discourage female labor market participation. These barriers are compounded by unequal laws. In the recent release 2022 World Bank study, Women, Business, and the Law found that 2.4 billion women of working age still do not enjoy the same economic rights as men. Of the 190 economies surveyed, 178 maintain legal barriers that prevent women's full economic participation. Women continue to face some form of job restrictions in over 85 countries. In 95 countries, women are not guaranteed equal pay for equal work. And 76 countries have laws which limit women's right to land ownership, which is a vital resource for poverty reduction. We've also seen how COVID-19 has rolled back much of the progress we've achieved in increased levels of gender-based violence and an increased care burden on women. The disproportionate impact of conflicts and disasters on women is well documented and painfully observed. Tackling climate change is not only protecting the planet, it's also dismantling these barriers to progress. Yet for generations, women have been using innovative tactics in mitigating the impacts of climate change. This isn't new, but what they need now is the recognition for their leadership and an ecosystem that works for them. Launched during UNGA in 2019 in partnership with 6 UN agencies, WIA aims to do just that by creating an enabling ecosystem for women entrepreneurs and maximizing their developmental impact. But we also want a world that is habitable for future generations, which is why WIA is committed to supporting green entrepreneurship. Data shows that women entrepreneurs know financial returns and social returns are not mutually exclusive. According to the 2020 Global Entrepreneur Report by BNP Paribas, 54% of women entrepreneurs say that beyond income, reducing their carbon footprint is a top measure of success in investing, compared to just 41% for male entrepreneurs. At WIA, we see firsthand how women are solutionaries, despite the odds, and I think need to be recognized. That's women's resilience and capacity to overcome. They are the experts in their own experiences. They're problem solvers who think outside the box and consider the impact of their decisions far beyond their own immediate gain. So when we partner with women entrepreneurs, our investments go further. Just last year, we had joined forces with the Commonwealth Business Women's Network to drive change for women entrepreneurs in over 54 countries of the Commonwealth, 52 of which are considered small states, most vulnerable to the effect of climate change. WIA's partnership with the We Empower UN SDG Challenge, which recognizes innovative women entrepreneurs, is challenging the status quo. Another example of our commitment to maximizing development impact of women entrepreneurs. I would like to conclude by saying this. If we're truly to create an enabling ecosystem for women entrepreneurs to scale up and replicate their practices, we need more commitment makers and more private sector companies and public sector partners to join force with the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator. Commit to join us, and let's catalyze women's entrepreneurship to make the changes we want to see for women throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb. And thank you very much for highlighting the challenges the women continue to face and what needs to be done to move the needle. And thank you also for this powerful call for more commitment makers to join the WIA. And now it is my pleasure, if I can share my screen, to introduce our moderator for today's first session. Elizabeth Vasquez, and I'm sure all or most of you know very well, is the CEO and co-founder of WeConnect International. WeConnect International supports and promotes women-owned businesses in over 100 countries. Elizabeth is a world leader in women's economic empowerment and global supplier diversity and inclusion. She also co-authored the book on Buying for Impact, How to Buy from Women and Change Our World. So Elizabeth will moderate our first session, Investing in Women Entrepreneurs to Tackle Climate Change. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Meral, and thank you for your inclusive leadership. It's inspiring, and we are honored this morning to have an absolutely incredible lineup of speakers from the UN family. It's a long list, so we are all very fortunate to have everyone here in this moment talking about this particular issue. Vic Van Uren is the International Labor Organization's Director for Enterprises Department. Representing the International Trade Center was Executive Director Pamela Coke-Hamilton, who is unfortunately able to join us today. But fortunately, we will be joined by Anna Mori, the Head of Partnerships and Projects for the UN International Trade Center. We also have Stephen Barreau, the Deputy to the Director of the International Telecommunications Union. And representing UNDP is Haliang Xu, Assistant Secretary General and UNDP's Director for Bureau of Policy and Program Support. We also have Sanda Ojiambo, Executive Director and CEO of the United Nations Global Compact, and representing the UN Women, Anita Bhatia, Deputy Executive Director and Assistant Secretary General. So I know all of you are wowed. I am, and I know this is going to be a really interactive conversation. So I'd like to ask each of the panelists for their views on how women-owned businesses are addressing climate change through innovation, and what barriers exist which prevent them from entering the green economy. Anita, if we could begin with you, could you please speak to how women are overcoming the barriers and devising innovative practices in tackling climate change and accessing opportunities to participate in the green economy?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And can I just say that it is a real pleasure for me to be able to participate in this morning's panel. And I'd like to start by just thanking Mary Kay for the great partnership that we have on the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator. And I'd also really like to thank all of our UN partners who are here with us today for what I think is a wonderful example of interagency UN collaboration of the sort that we need to do much more of and much more at scale. So with that, let me just reflect on the question you asked, Elizabeth, about what are the barriers and how women are overcoming the barriers. So first of all, the barriers to jobs in that actually create a green economy are no different from the barriers that women entrepreneurs face generally. But there are some added nuances, and I'll come to those in a minute. So those barriers have to do, of course, with the fact that women entrepreneurs typically face difficulties with accessing finance because of outdated laws where it's very hard to collateralize things other than fixed assets, and very often women don't have titles to land, so they cannot use land as a collateral. And many countries still have laws where you cannot use movable assets as collateral. So the whole issue of collateral and being able to get access to finance remains a big constraint for small businesses in general, but women businesses in particular. Second, the issue of access to markets. Very often, even when women have products, they find it very difficult to get connected into markets, either because they don't have the information, there are information asymmetries, or because there are structural barriers that get in the way of that access to market. And third, very often there hasn't been enough investment from an ecosystem, whether supported by the public or the private sector, in the skills and the training and the capacities that are needed to be successful business, to be successful entrepreneurs. To that, I would add that in the green economy, many of the jobs are jobs that require specific training in either STEM education or specific knowledge of a kind that is typically not an area where women dominate. In fact, a lot of science and technology education is still male dominated. Now, there are parts of the world where this is different. For example, in the Middle East, there are actually more women in STEM education than there are men, but that is an anomaly. That is not the case generally. So given that, only 28% of engineering graduates and 40% of computer science graduates globally are women, there is a barrier to entry that has been created by this segregation in access to STEM education. And let's face it, there is still a great deal of occupational segregation out there in terms of the labor market, because there are certain jobs, just take, plumbing or mechanical work, which are much more likely to be done by men than they are to be done by women. So that is the landscape. So how can women actually challenge this? Well, one, I think something that UN Women has been doing, which is the promotion of gender responsive procurement, which basically sets a high standard for procurers of goods and services to say, we want to purchase only from or predominantly from women-owned businesses. This makes a big difference because it gives women a leg up and their businesses a leg up in the supply chain. So that's one example of how women can overcome these barriers. Another example, of course, is finding innovative ways to access capital. And that can include anything from mobile banking to more access to venture capital, a range of ways to access more capital. And then finally, I think one other way for women to participate in the green economy is to just make sure that, as governments help businesses overall to get access to markets, either through education on phytosanitary conditions for, say, agribusiness products, that women businesses are supported by small business association and chambers of commerce to access that information and then get a leg up in the system. With that, back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Anita, for your message on how UN Women is supporting women entrepreneurs as proactive agents in climate change. And I can testify firsthand the way you collaborate. We Connect International is grateful for what we're doing together on gender inclusive sourcing in Asia and Africa and in Europe. And so really congratulations on the excellent work you're doing in that space. Next, we will hear from the Executive Director and CEO of the United Nations Global Compact, Sanda Ojiambo, about the fundamental role businesses have to play in integrating women entrepreneurs in the marketplace in their commitment to climate change. And Sanda, I always love the chance to get to talk with you. You're so inspiring and doing really pioneering work in this space. So please share with us how you're doing it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and really great to be amongst the friends and fellow panelists here. Good to see you all again. So, I think Anita's really laid out, I think, what are some of these real structural challenges to women and their full participation. And, before I really talk a little bit more about what we're doing, I just also wanted to highlight a few other things and why, research really underscores the importance and the need to have, women's full participation in these sectors. A couple of research statistics, women employ women employ 6 times more women in other companies than men. The fundamentally here is, why would you play with just half a team? It really doesn't pay to exclude such an important part of the economy, and certainly in terms of domestic and other purchasing decisions, women do play a key role. So it truly is important to have women on board. We also note that, women, invest a lot more of their income in their families and then therefore have a knock-on effect in communities. So it really is important to allow women access to these income earning opportunities, because it really does have a forward-looking growth effect on families and communities. Anita again talked about some of the barriers: restriction on land ownership, restriction on markets that really just limit women's full participation. But fundamental and underlying it all, and where the Global Compact comes to work, is really about the lack of voice, the lack of meaningful participation spaces, and the lack of full agency for women. And that's what we at the Global Compact aim to do around our work on target gender equality. Allow me to just cite one more issue, which I think is fundamental to the whole climate debate and agriculture, which is, even when you look at the representation of women in both national and global climate negotiating bodies, which is where a lot of the policy-making decisions are made and really important decision-making on women's participation, it's really just at 30%. So we know that fundamentally we will not have that equal say and that equal space unless we can also make this change at the policy level and then see that trickle down. So be that as it may, where we're working also as the UN Global Compact is ways in which we can enhance and really increase the opportunities for women in leadership at the board level and certainly in management level, so that active space for meaningful participation, for voice, for influence in policy decisions and investment decisions really does make sense. We run a program called Target Gender Equality that really aims to work with companies globally to create the space for increased participation by women in these 2 important bodies. It's a start, and we have a number, actually in partnership with UN Women as well, and thank you to Anita and her team, signed up a significant number of companies who have signed on to our work. We're really looking at how we can shift from policy to commitments to real action and outcomes, where women do play an important role in decision making. And as such, we hope to really help women in related industries to just have increasing access to decision making, ultimately increase access to finance, reducing these gender-based barriers that really limit women's participation, allow companies to see the value of investing in increasing women's business decision-making skills, access to finance, and really building the case for equal economic opportunities for both men and women. I think that's really where we need to go in our work and our initiatives. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Sanda, for your commitment to equal opportunity. I think that's what you're talking about, making sure that men and women, non-binary people, we all have an equal opportunity to contribute to and benefit from inclusive growth and sustainability. It's up to all of us to make sure that we have a planet that is healthy for everyone and that people are healthy. And so thank you very, very much for the work you're doing in the business space, because without that, we're not going to achieve the SDGs. So let's now turn to UNDP's Haliang Xu, Assistant Secretary General and UNDP's Director of Bureau for Policy and Program Support. Haliang, we know UNDP is supporting countries across the world to fulfill their climate promises, as well as economic recovery plans leading to a green economy with gender equality, where women play a central role. We'd love to hear more about how you're promoting a green and gender equal economic recovery, how you're boosting local economies, how you're integrating public and private efforts, and how you're encouraging female leadership and entrepreneurial endeavors connected to climate solutions. Haliang?
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. First, I'm really happy, to represent UNDP to join this important event. And we know that the pandemic, has had a serious impact, on the human development, and also really reversed, the critical gains, in gender equality. And according to ILO, women lost more than 60 million jobs in 2020 alone. So I think the impact is really serious. So the subject we're talking about today is important. I think to deal with the issues of entrepreneurship and climate action, I think from our point of view, it is important to understand the intersections between sustainable development, climate, and gender equality, and the way we approach these issues. I think that's the key, understanding the intersections of this. And climate change, gender inequality and poverty are interconnected, right, in a mutually reinforceable way. So that's a problem. Right? So climate change and the environmental degradation, for example, can exacerbate food, water, and energy insecurity, while amplifying underlying poverty and gender inequalities. So I think the challenge is really how do we deal with working with governments, with the civil society, with the private sector, and really how to deal with this, and addressing so-called the triple impact. Right? We needed to find a solution that have this triple impact that delivers benefits, in terms of poverty alleviation, right? Gender equality, and also climate change mitigation and adaptation. Right? So that's what UNDP is trying to look at and to work on. And a number of steps we're taking is that first, you really have to work with the public sector effectively. The public sector have to take this as a major objective. Right? So in this area, we're working on gender parity in the Ministries of Environment, for example, right? Through our Gender in Public Administration initiative, we call JEPA, right? Because with more women in decision-making positions, I think this issue will receive more attention. So this is one way we approach this, and we have another problem that we're dealing with this issue in the public sector, that we have a gender equality seal for public institutions program, right? That with certain criteria and actions and commitments, then we hope that the private sector is more committed, to gender equality goals, and also including in climate and in environmental actions. And the other issue I think is really women's participation, right? Because not only women are affected by climate actions, but they bring a lot of knowledge and wisdom, right? And through adaptation and mitigation efforts that they are undertaking, right, including nature-based solutions. So how can we empower women, right, as farmers, entrepreneurs, producers, consumers, and household, managers, right? And so what can we do to include the women? So one thing we're trying to do, at the core of our work, is to try to address the structural inequalities that limit women's ability to fully participate, right, and benefit from climate change policy making. So this is another area we're working on. I wanted to just give you two quick examples of what we have done. Okay, and we heard Chief Operating Officer from Mary Kay, right? I think Deborah, was here. But we actually have a project we did in China that was in partnership with Mary Kay, with the Chinese government, and also in Yunnan province, with the Women's Federation of Yunnan province. And we piloted a concept called SDG Village, right? And this SDG Village essentially is a territory where, the different actors come together, public and private sector come together, right? Through identification of economic potential of the region, right? Through identification of lagging SDGs, and also then really by bringing actors together, okay? And through this effort, where everybody is working together, we reduce this locality, right? This one village, so SDG village, we reduce the poverty from 28% to 0%, right? Eliminate the poverty, right? In 3 years' time. And more importantly, it is the activation of the entrepreneurship, right? That sort of kicked off the engine of development, and not only started the engine, but also sustained the engine, right? So I think this is a good example of how we can work together, right, to actually promote entrepreneurship, but also achieve lasting sustainable development. Another example is what we did in Peru, so-called in helping women, right, in the creation of energy solutions to tackle climate change. So we under the GEF funding, right, Global Environmental Facility funding, we funded a project, and in this project there's an activity called E-Women Energy School, right? So this is essentially to help women to create enterprises to provide clean energy services to their own communities, and so that we can support them, with business acceleration services and also financing solutions. So there are, concrete examples that everybody, I think, on this call, I'm sure, is doing something about. And we also, I can see that in the chat, there are a lot of women entrepreneurs, in this room. So I think the last point I want to make is that, we would like to call our private sector partners, right, and our, investment, community to really work together, to act together, right, and to really achieve, this green and just transition, right, through this, recovery from the pandemic. Because after all, the private sector contributes to 90% of the environment, employment, right? 80% of the capital flows, and also 60% of the GDP in the world. Right? So I think we really have to work together to achieve this common goal, right? And I would say, let's simply put, right? It is not possible to think of a future without poverty and hunger, and with the universal development, right? When women are excluded from economic decision making, right? From economic participation, and without equal opportunities to grow, right? To develop and contribute to society. So I think this is really what we're trying to achieve together. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Halian, for making such clear links between equality, ending poverty, security, sustainability, and female entrepreneurship. I haven't heard such a succinct way of linking such important concepts and ways to take action so that we could achieve all of that, hopefully by 2030 if we all work together. So next I want to ask Stephen Barreau, Deputy to the Director of the International Telecommunications Union, how does the lack of access and use of ICTs prevent women entrepreneurs from not only entering, but also having a leading role in the green economy?
Thank you, Elizabeth. And it's a great pleasure to be with you here today and with all our panelists and guests, and to join our partners to discuss these issues facing women entrepreneurs, which entrench the gender divide and which, as the panelists before me have already noted, this weakens society as a whole and hinders the development of a green economy. So our discussion today aligns with two of ITU's key areas of action, our environment and climate change, as well as our gender equality and empowerment of women and girls through information communication technologies. So on gender equality, digital inclusion is the core of what we do in the ITU telecommunications development sector, with our goal being to ensure inclusive, equal access and use of ICTs for all. Our aim with environment in relation to the environment and climate change is to develop and deploy digital technologies with environmental impact in mind. As we all know, digital technologies, especially since the COVID era, are shaping today's society and play a pivotal role in all sectors. Everyone, everywhere should be able to use these technologies to take advantage of their benefits. And at ITU, we believe that digital technologies have the power to unlock potential and create more sustainable societies. Technology and data are the motors of supply chains for the future. And as digital technologies develop, the digital skills necessary to dive in and connect with digital supply chain technologies also evolves. And women entrepreneurs must pivot to digital. With the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more people have had to move their businesses online, which in many cases is a challenging proposition. But this is particularly so in developing countries and LDCs, and particularly a greater challenge for women in those countries. Access to and the use of ICTs are key to bring your business online, but ITU's research notes that women, particularly in developing countries and LDCs, are more likely to lack access to ICTs and more likely to lack the skills to use them effectively. These women are now at great risk of being left behind. ICTs are also shaping future jobs. By some estimates, 75% of jobs of the future will require STEM skills, and the proportion will likely be even higher among green jobs. Women are underrepresented and disadvantaged in green STEM skills and green entrepreneurship, which are two disciplines that will be vital to build back from the pandemic sustainably. I think Anita made some great points around this and how this divide works in different countries. As green jobs and sustainable businesses will also be the driver of future growth, we need to make sure that women are not only equipped with the necessary skills, but through having these skills and putting appropriate practices and policies in place, are also fully included in the digital world of the future. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Stephen. I think the points you made about digital inclusion for all, everyone having an equal access to leverage and develop and use ICTs that include women and girls, and especially in developing countries and the least developed countries, and how all of this can support a much needed green economy with more stable and sustainable value chains where no one is left behind is a really powerful message. And just knowing that this can be done and it must be done, and your calls to action are really critical. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to turn to Anna Mori, the head of partnerships and projects at the UN International Trade Center. Anna, the International Trade Center is fully dedicated to fostering inclusive and sustainable economic development by supporting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Given that the ITC works closely with entrepreneurs, especially with women, young people, and marginalized communities in developing and least developed economies, can you please tell us what is the reality on the ground for small businesses, particularly those led by women that have been affected by climate change? How have they been most impacted, and what are the main barriers that prevent them from participating in the green economy? Anna?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and dear fellow panelists. So from a business perspective, coming from the UN International Trade Center, we often encounter the argument that trade is a double-edged sword, beneficial for livelihoods, but detrimental to achieving a green and sustainable future, right? But what we know is that supporting small businesses to go green is a must, is key. Why? Simply because small enterprises provide 2/3 of the world's employment, and they are responsible for 50% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Yet, a UNEP report revealed that less than 19% of these businesses have been able to work with their governments to adapt to climate change. So basically, what we can say is that in reality, many of these entrepreneurs, producers, and businesses, they face barriers for making their businesses practices more sustainable, with women entrepreneurs being even more affected. And also because of the climate crisis, droughts, for example, these same women who are often the main caregivers for the families, they have to spend hours a day fetching food, fuel, fresh water for their daily use. And this time, of course, could be spent in learning new skills, networking with sustainable entrepreneurs to grow their resilience, for example, diversifying, right? So these are just a few of the barriers that these women entrepreneurs face, including what Anita mentioned, of course, which is the lack of access to capital, which might push these entrepreneurs, these women entrepreneurs, to not prioritize investments in the adaptation to climate change or the adoption of sustainable practices for the simple fact of using this money to make their companies just survive, right? But today I want to highlight two key challenges that are very important. The first one is the digital divide mentioned by ITU, by Stephen. I like this data, this stats that says that globally we have in the world 250 million fewer women than men connected to the internet. We are talking about a country with the size of Brazil not being online, which means that these women do not have access to the tools, to the online learning seminars like today we're speaking about, right? Climate change, information that can accelerate green solutions in entrepreneurship. And I'm not even mentioning the gender gap in digital skills, in digitizing their businesses, right? So finally, the other challenge that I would like to highlight is the lack of harmonization of national and international standards of green products and business processes. One clear example is the growing field of ESG, environmental, social, and governance regulations that I don't know, but perhaps most of you know, for businesses that wish to go green, they need to comply with ESG regulations. Well, amongst all these international bodies, there's much debate, a lot of debate, and little consensus about which standards businesses need to comply with. What I'm trying to say in other words is that the lack of standards harmonization leads to this plethora of different standards, making it very difficult for SMEs, small businesses led by women, for example, it makes very difficult for them to navigate this process of transitioning to this green economy. So these are the points that I wanted to highlight today. And these are points that we tackle at ITC She Trades, our initiative to support women entrepreneurs, in the hope that our agencies and also the audience that is watching us today could place these points also and these problems as a priority in their agenda. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Anna, for your powerful call to action for creating an ecosystem for Go Green businesses as a must and not some nice to have. This is really critical for us to build resiliency and move us to more inclusive growth that is sustainable and that's in line with these very important and developing ESG standards. And now to Vic Van Buren, the International Labour Organization's Director for Enterprise Development. Vic, given the ILO's mandate in advancing labor rights and promoting decent work for all, how are women-owned businesses addressing the challenges presented by climate change? And if you could also speak to the barriers that prevent them from entering the green economy. Vic?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. You know, I prepared a script which I'm going to put one side because I've got some very clear thoughts that I want to put forward today. You know, we got these wars going on. We've got the war in East Europe, and we've got a number of wars that we seem to have forgotten about. And it's while these men are playing war games to show their power and boost their egos, the people that are suffering most of all are women and children. Coming from the pandemic now into the wars, the women are bearing the brunt of this. And we need more women leadership in not only in business, but in political roles to bring about this peace that we need and to bring about the growth we need. But anyway, enough said about that. What we've got is the climate change presents us with an opportunity. We've seen the backward steps from the pandemics and the wars, but climate change is now going to provide us with almost a clean sheet that we can start putting stuff into policies. We can put into business plans, into businesses, because if you go to any conference now, you're going to find that climate change is one of the priority areas that has been spoken about. We've got the opportunity now to build into all of these initiatives a gender component. We can't outsource this to a gender bureau. We cannot have this as a cross-cutting theme. This has got to be built into mainstreaming of policies and plans, and we've got to start measuring more effectively. We've got to set targets, and we've got to achieve those targets. And it's got to be across all industries. We can't just single out a few that are leading the pack. we can pull out many examples of pockets of excellence in all our UN agencies, including in the ILO, of entrepreneurship programs, women entrepreneurship development, but we're not making the inroads that need to happen to make a difference. And I think the climate change debate presents us with this opportunity to mainstream in all our thinking the role of gender and the way forward. From education, from branding, there's very different components, right down to the home. I mean, I've got 6 sisters, and in my home, their career choice was shaped by a conservative grandfather and a conservative father who showed them where they can choose their careers, rather than providing an open space for them to decide on those future careers. All these facets, I think, collectively will make an important, play an important role. In the ILO, we've got a just transition guideline. And this just transition guideline is looking at the world of work and providing opportunities for women to say, well, how can they be part of this just transition? And the guidelines spell out to government, business, and workers, what are those steps that they need to take to make sure that there is this just transition, including at the heart of it, the role of gender. Now, I think we do find that women are already actors in the green economy, as farmers, entrepreneurs, as managers. There's women in ecotourism, women in waste collectors and green workers. So there's many examples in India, and so we can go to Costa Rica and different countries to find these good practices. But we've got to be real and understand that the inroads we're making are not adequate. And that's why I come back to my initial point that we need to mainstream this into all global policies, business policies, and national policies. At the moment, it's too much on the sideline and the periphery, and you put in, you do a report, and at the end of the day, you decide, oh, hang on, I haven't got gender, so let's put a few words of gender in there and make sure we've got it aligned. We've got to move from that scenario and get serious. Asana Capricha, back to you.
Preach on, Vic. I really sincerely appreciate your recognition of the fact that we have some geopolitical nightmares that we're all facing today, but that cannot stop us from building clear stretch goals and strategies that are actually going to move us towards justice and equality for men, women, non-binary workers in all sectors and all countries, that are also sustainable, that are good for people and good for the planet. So I appreciate your intervention and your sharing your wisdom and your vision for where we can and must move forward in spite of the challenges. So I'd like to thank each of you for your already very rich contributions to this discussion, but now I'd like to turn to a second question, namely, how can women entrepreneurs be supported to create innovative climate solutions that can lead in the green recovery? A lot of them are already doing this, by the way. We work with women-owned businesses in 130 countries, and I can promise you that the way these women build their business models, generally speaking, it is based on principles of do no harm. And so I think, we have this opportunity to really leverage the way women do business in the world and engage in their communities so that everyone benefits. So Anita, if we can, let's begin with you. What would you consider as a key building block that supports women entrepreneurs who are lacking in the way they can right now today lead in the green economy, where you have these really big companies leading the way? But I really think it's the up and coming women in the communities that are directly impacted that could also have the most impact. But Anita, I'd love your thoughts on this.
Thank you for the question, Elizabeth. I think it's very important that we be precise in terms of what we are talking about when we say supporting women in the green economy. And I think we need to look at some definitions. And I know ILO has put some out there, UNEP has some out there, but we need to be clear, what do we mean when we talk about green jobs and jobs that lead to a more decarbonized world? And those jobs are jobs in actually a range of sectors. It's agriculture, it's manufacturing, it's engineering, different jobs that support decarbonization. And so I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all solution. because of the occupational segregation that exists within different sectors. So I do think, we need sector-specific solutions, but then broadly, we need ecosystem solutions as well. And those ecosystem solutions have to do by really building the ecosystem for green entrepreneurship, which means, first and foremost, an educational component to really disseminate information on what are the opportunities from the green economy, because very often investments in the green economy are seen as zero sum, where there are lots of losers, and there's a lot of discussion of the losers driven by, the large oil, gas, and natural resource companies, and not so much about the winners. So we need more focus on who wins from decarbonized jobs. And second, the whole ecosystem of entrepreneurship for green jobs needs to tackle some of the issues that existed even before this big urge to focus on decarbonization, which is, for example, in the case of agriculture, one of the biggest barriers that agricultural products from emerging markets face is, for example, phytosanitary conditions and standards around phytosanitary conditions that women entrepreneurs, who are typically small business entrepreneurs, will never be able to meet. So there need to be chambers of commerce, small business associations, and pillars of the business ecosystem who are pushing for phytosanitary conditions that can allow, for example, export of climate smart agricultural products that are made by business entrepreneurs. So it's that whole question of, ensuring there is access to markets. And then finally, I think we do need venture capital and the creation of a whole green tech economy, much in the way fintech was created. I think given what was said earlier about the focus on digital, we need to bring digital and green together and create something called a green tech ecosystem, much in the way that the fintech ecosystem was created. It didn't exist 20 years ago, but it's a very vibrant part of entrepreneurial ecosystems now. We need to do the same for green jobs. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Okay, as always, fascinating. Thank you, Anita, for helping us to define what it means when we talk about green companies and green jobs across all sectors, but with sector-specific solutions that can actually be scaled in this new green tech space, with support for the people who have had the old jobs, and especially women, but we need to make sure that no one is left behind, as you always say. We need to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to be reskilled in this process, and that everyone can contribute and benefit from this transition to sustainability and inclusion. So, Sanda, can you speak to the question how to support women entrepreneurs to create innovative climate solutions and lead the green recovery as it relates directly to the nature of the UN Global Compact's work? Sanda?
Right, sure, thanks. And, again, I'll go back to the question of, how can this support really effectively help address the biases and the limitations that women face, because they will not be able to fully bring to bear the innovation and the response to the green recovery if those structural and systemic barriers exist. So from our perspective, there's three key things that private sector can do. And the first is really just putting women at the center, or putting women at the table in terms of discussions, planning, strategy on climate resilience and approaches and solutions. I think it's important to also look at the ways in which, women-led enterprises can also be considered not only as part of the table, but also looking at their supply chains and just making sure that they're able to integrate women in all levels of efforts. This obviously is going to require, as I've always said, making space at the table, but also making sure that training, financing, and technologies are all available to women. Within the value chain and supply chain, just making sure that women also get the same amount of support around supply chain resiliency. And we've seen a lot of the challenges around supply chain resiliency, both with the pandemic and even now as we see the situations break out around the world with just challenges on supply chain. The key thing is that women will continue to need that additional level of support in terms of access to finance, access to technology, and access to markets. The third, in terms of what private sector can do, is really around influence. If you look at sectoral groupings, be it the agricultural sector or the financing sector, I think the full weight of business leadership around speaking out and challenging these inequalities and really looking at how businesses can make the right decisions to make sure that women are ultimately included, I think is really important. So for us, those are the three actions, act and put women at the center, enable women to be effective participants, not just at the table, but through the value chain. And thirdly, looking at the collective voice of influence in terms of challenging barriers and lack of access to all of these resources as we go forward. It really is important to be able to support training and skills building, but more important, really just to demonstrate that there is strong economic value, not just social and community value, but strong economic value in including women as business participants.
Sanda, as always, thank you for your wisdom and clear examples of action steps. Anita, I know you have to leave a bit early, so I just wanted to know, before you leave, could you give us your quick action statements? Like, what is your call to action? Would love to hear from you.
Well, I think we've had a number of commitment makers, and we have a number of champions, or at this panel already, who are doing great work to push on this whole agenda of women's entrepreneurship. If I had one call to action, I would say, I think we need more people to join in this effort and to really bring synergies by leveraging existing things that work and taking them to scale. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of good things that are working. Hao Liang mentioned this wonderful example. It was really fascinating to listen to him, of this experiment that was done where you had very clear results in a short period of time. Stephen mentioned some of the work on the enabling environment, as did Vic. Sanda had great examples of what Global Compact's already doing. ITC is working on things that already have shown some success. So we just need to pool all of these efforts together and scale them. That would be my call to action. Let's continue to scale existing things that work, and let's bring more people to the table, and let's have more people join this great party. On that note, I must say goodbye and thank you so much, Elizabeth, and a great pleasure to be with all of you on this panel. Lovely to see so many of you again. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you, Anita. I think this is a great example of a commitment to bringing everyone together to make sure that we're not chasing the shiny objects, but we're taking what has been proven to work and figuring out ways to collaborate and scale. I love it. Sanda gave us some really concrete examples of how we do this. Hao Liang, can you outline some best practices and how to create an enabling ecosystem for women entrepreneurs in devising innovative climate-specific solutions?
Thank you very much. I would maybe talking a bit more general terms, on this. The Women in Entrepreneurship Accelerator, right? So, which in a way the issue we're discussing has an ambitious goal of empowering 5 million women entrepreneurs by 2030. Right? No, it has scale, right? So my feeling is that really, to achieve that scale, you need obviously, actions, from all the participants that are important, right? And so my central point is that you cannot put all the burdens on women entrepreneurs. You cannot expect just women by their own hard working and determination will just be able to do all of this. I think there is really a strong responsibility on the part of the government and international organizations, the IFIs and others, to really provide a concrete ecosystem of support to enable them, right, so that they can afford to take risks. But they should not be asked to take all the risks to develop businesses, right, to support climate actions and so forth. So what role, right, that the governments, the public sector should see providing as public goods, right, in this ecosystem of support, I think is critical. Right? There needs to be investment from the public sector for that supportive environment, so that women entrepreneurs can afford to fail, right? So I think, and then continue to innovate and push forward. I think this is a question that I think we need to look at very, very seriously. Where I see success, it's always because there's a ecosystem support that allows the growth of dynamic, entrepreneurship, to develop. So this is one. And then on the private sector part, I would also say that, we know that it is not charity, right? It is not, a grant, it's not a donation, right? You're looking for a return, right? Financial return, safe financial return. But here, there's a question of, not only ESG standards, but also, I guess, a shared responsibility, and to ensure that everybody in the society, actually moves forward and no one is really left behind. So I think in your investment strategy and the decisions, right? So we also needed to see what kind of contributions this vast amount of capital can contribute to achieve a societal goal. So it's not easy. I have not been an entrepreneur myself. I sometimes thinking what would I do if I were in that situation, right? So I respect a lot everybody who has actually done businesses, but I feel that I can do it if I'm put in that situation, but I know what kind of support I will need. So my main point is really about the support, the investment that from the public sector in particular is required. Thank you.
And those are really important points in terms of the important role of having an ecosystem approach. We all represent really big organizations, but there is not one organization here or anywhere that can actually get us to equality and to sustainability. It clearly takes a village. I know that the corporations We Connect International works with, they're the biggest companies in the world. They're all trying to figure this out in terms of inclusion and sustainability. And they are anxious to have better relationships with the governments that are leading in this space, as well as civil society organizations. We Connect is helping UN procurement, World Bank Group procurement, the IMF procurement, as well as doing projects with the Asia Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and many other organizations that are committed to inclusion and to sustainability. But you're right, we don't yet have the mechanisms to connect in a way that will actually expedite with urgency the issues we're talking about right now. We're going to have to be much more proactive if we're going to achieve the SDGs by 2030. It will not happen unless we build the ecosystems that you're talking about, Hal-Young. So Stephen, with that, how can women entrepreneurs, and especially women entrepreneurs in the tech sector, lead the green economy? And what can we do to support them to create innovative solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Unlike Hao-Ling, I'm actually a failed entrepreneur myself, so I do know how hard it is, although I don't know how hard it is to be a woman entrepreneur. Women entrepreneurs in the tech sector are very creative, and they offer a range of innovative and sustainable solutions. For example, in February, ITU delivered a workshop on digital skills for women entrepreneurs in the textile sector in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And it was uplifting to see how women used recycling materials and transformed them into fashion design products that contributed to the circular economy, reducing waste and protecting the environment. By being focused on creative, innovative solutions to intractable problems, women entrepreneurs can play a crucial role in leading the green economy. And women's creativity can help to push forward new green solutions. So this doesn't only create new products, it also creates, green entrepreneurs can bring about qualitative changes in enterprise structures, strategies, and practices. And just in terms of supporting them, I'll try to be quick because I know time is low. We can develop targeted trainings, helping women from the tech sector to use ICTs to their advantage and to further develop their ideas and innovative solutions. We can provide the training in non-traditional tech sectors. The non-traditional tech sector is highly relevant for a sustainable future. We can ensure financial support so that women-owned businesses across the world that use sustainable practices and that aim to address environmental issues don't miss the opportunities to have their ideas implemented and to have their businesses grow. I'll stop there because I know you're running low on time, but there are amazing ways that we can facilitate and transform women entrepreneurs' businesses. Thank you.
Stephen, we do not want you to cut yourself short, because what you're saying about training for how to leverage ICTs, especially in today's COVID environment, and especially in non-traditional sectors, with the financial support that's required to make sure that everyone is able to not be left behind, is absolutely critical. So thank you for the reminders that it's not just in the obvious green sectors or obvious tech sectors. It has to be across all sectors. So thank you and of businesses of all sizes. So Anna, given that the ITC works closely with the private sector and the public sector, based on your experience working with SMEs, which areas or partnerships have shown to be the most effective at promoting innovative climate solutions and contributions to the green economy? And where should our resources be concentrated to make a green recovery a reality?
I can speak, thank you, Elizabeth. I can speak by the experience of ITC, right? We strive to support women's entrepreneurship and to place this at the heart of this solution to achieve a green economic recovery also after the pandemic. And the way we are doing, at least this is our experience, is through three main different angles. So three different ways. Number one is by building the case of the importance, right, of sustainable practices can be cost saving instead of expensive. So by building the case through advocacy and lessons learned. And last year we launched the Itc Aquapreneur Awards, which is a green business competition targeting young entrepreneurs from developing countries that offer solutions to environmental challenges. And we were happy to see that 3 out of 9 finalists were women entrepreneurs with green innovations that aim to tackle these pressing issues such as sustainable waste management, water efficiency, renewable and energy efficiency. And through these awards, what we wanted to highlight was their success stories, share that this is good business, and inspire other young women or young entrepreneurs to innovate and follow their entrepreneurial path. So building the case advocacy. Then number 2 is by promoting the sustainable conducive ecosystem that was also mentioned by Hao-Liang, right? What we've done, we produced a green recovery plan for small businesses to tackle climate crisis as part of one of our reports, SME Competitiveness Outlook, that we launched. And in this report, what we put actually was 20 action points for key stakeholders, government officials, civil societies, business associations on how to help small businesses, including those that are led by women, increase their green competitiveness and resilience against shocks. I can share this green recovery plan with all of you and the practical 20 points later on. And number 3, what we try to do at ITC is to enact those points on the ground by working with SMEs SMEs led by women entrepreneurs, and giving them the tools to increase this green competitiveness, as we are calling here at ITC. And this is mainly done through our flagship program called She Trades Initiative, which was established in 2015 with the mission to remove all the barriers that women face to trade. And we do this through working hand in hand with regional hub host institutions, chambers of commerce, business support organizations, and governments. And these include capacity building by providing digital transformation trainings to on-the-ground workshops on sustainable packaging standards and more. And we have an online platform called shetrades.com where women can access also women entrepreneurs from across the globe, developing, least developed countries, can access potential green impact investors and buyers to help them scale up their businesses. And also on this platform, they can find our newly launched Entrepreneurship certificate program with 27 courses in various languages, which was designed to support aspiring women that want to become entrepreneurs or established women entrepreneurs who have sustainable, innovative ideas to bring these ideas, these business ideas to reality. And this program, this entrepreneurship certificate program, I'm very proud to say that it was made possible through our partnership with all of these agencies, UN agencies that you're seeing today, and Mary Kay under the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. And I have a deep appreciation for the importance of the certification you're offering to give the women business owners experience, but also credibility that they have this expertise. I know for We Connect International member buyers, knowing that the women-owned businesses we serve are at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by one or more women, and they're actually certified as women-owned, gives them an additional assurance that they're actually spending money with the women business owners of the world. So thank you for the work that you're doing to develop that capacity and that competitiveness. Vic, can you speak to the question of how to support women entrepreneurs to create innovative climate solutions and lead the green recovery, especially as it relates directly to the ILO's work?
Thank you. We're doing an interesting research project with LinkedIn. And what we're looking to do is to identify where are the future green jobs going to be and what do they look like? And that's important because the traditional jobs are going to change if they're already changing with the digitalization, with the whole move from fossil fuel in the energy sector. And so we need to identify what are these future opportunities where women entrepreneurs can start exploring and being innovative in those areas. And so we need to make that research available to women to say, well, here's opportunity. Linked to that, we've heard many of the speakers say access to finance. And that's got to be one of the key success areas is access to finance once we've identified where these opportunities can be. And then one of the most effective ways is to look at procurement processes. And I'm not only looking at government, but also in the multinationals, because they have all got very effective procurement processes. And by introducing allowing women to get these opportunities through their procurement processes is certainly going to help the process. I think one of the other points that's important is to involve women at all levels in the planning processes. You don't speak for women, allow them to also put their challenges and their ideas on the table right up front in these innovative areas. And there one can go on many of these best practices that we've got. We've got some of them in the ILO. We've got women entrepreneurship training programs, but we've also got challenges. We can also put out specific calls for innovative areas. Just in my department, we've got a newly created innovation hub facility where we put out a call for action. We're going to do that in the next 2 weeks. A call for people to submit ideas to us. And we're going to try and encourage women to submit ideas to that platform where we can analyze, look at providing finance and walk them into a process of implementation. And so I think we need to concentrate on the areas of best practice right throughout the UN and in different countries, but at the same time, looking at the global challenges that we discussed earlier in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, really fantastic points, Vic. Thank you so much for your recognition of the importance of the world's largest buyers to be inclusive in their sourcing practices and make sure at least some of their spend is going to women, because right now it's about 1%. which is pathetic if women own a third of the world's businesses and they're half the world's population. So thank you for that call to action. It's really important, and making sure that the women workers of the world have opportunities with these growing businesses in the green economy. Sanda, I know that you and Stephen are about ready to go to really important meetings really quick. If I could get a quick call to action from each of you, Sanda and then Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And really great insights, Marie. Look, for me, I think the most important thing is that we can take all the intermediary actions that we need to do, but we have to be able to structurally challenge what these barriers are. So really leadership and private sector influence and understanding these barriers and acting on the barriers is what we need to do to create that systemic, long-term and sustainable change. So, let's look at how we can really challenge the orthodoxies on this one and allow women to fully participate in all of the opportunities as entrepreneurs and as climate activists and climate shapers and movers.
I love it. Thank you, Sanda. Stephen?
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. So moving toward a green economy goes hand in hand with creating inclusive and equal societies. We need to acknowledge this. It's crucial for women and men to equally benefit from opportunities presented by the green economy. Partnerships are critical to foster a green economy that leaves no one behind. So for this, we say that collaboration and cooperation among different stakeholders, initiatives like this one, is needed and is critical for us to move forward.
Absolutely. Haliang?
I think, again, the key is to achieve scale, right? So we all have done quite a lot individually. What we needed to do is to really connect, and achieve the scale. And in terms of accelerators, there are a lot of accelerators in the world. So how can we, capitalize on these vast assets, but really, work together to achieve impact and at scale is something we needed to really focus on in the next few years. Thank you.
I love it. Anna?
So women entrepreneurs are disproportionately affected by climate change, and they are less prepared to adapt against shocks. The main barriers that women face include the digital divide, lack of finance, and lack of harmonized international standards for green businesses, processes, and products. So we can tackle these issues through capacity building, supportive policy environment, and key partnership. There is already a gender inequality gap, a gender finance gap, gender digital gap. Let's just not add one more to the list, a green gender gap. Let's act together to practically create a sustainable, inclusive ecosystem, trade ecosystem for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Absolutely. I hear a lot of calls to action, to act with intention, with urgency, in partnership, and not try to do it on our own. So these are all very encouraging messages, and not because they're messages, but because you all are actually doing this work and bringing everyone along with you. So many thanks to the UN family for leading in this space. Thank you to these incredible panelists, Vic, Anna, Stephen, Haliang, Sanda, Anita. Our panelists gave all of us some inspiration and some concrete examples of actions we can take. And I hope that there are going to be additional takeaway steps that all of you will be able to bring to the table. I know, Meral, you're so accessible and you want everyone to join into this movement and help move this forward. So let me turn it over to you to share what's next.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And also thank you so much for your kind words and your support. And so thank you very much, all our speakers, our WEA partners for the strong collaboration, and our management for your support and joining us today. And thank you, Anna, so much for stepping in such a short notice. So today also we are excited to report progress and demonstrate the unique impact 6 UN agencies and the private sector can have when working together. So each of our projects and knowledge products represent a concrete step toward the systemic transformation women need in the world. In 2021-2022, we focused on entrepreneurship development and policy recommendation led by ILO. Capacity building on entrepreneurship was led by ITC. Digital skills for women's SMEs led by ITU. Transition from informal to formal economy was led by UNDP, and gender responsive procurement was the joint work of UN Women and UNGC so far for the last year. So now I invite you all to sit down and enjoy a video. This video highlights the impact work done so far by ILO, ITC, UN Women, and Global Compact around the world, and respectively on the document. Thank you so much, and here's our video.
Dizem que empreender não é uma tarefa fácil. Vai ver, é por isso que tantas mulheres escolheram esse desafio. Afinal, empreender é para quem coloca a mão na massa, para quem não mede esforços, encara vários papéis, assume múltiplas tarefas e entrega o melhor resultado. Arriscado, difícil, não consigo. Nada disso faz parte do vocabulário de uma mulher disposta a crescer. Elas já são maioria quando o assunto é empreender. E se depender de nós, serão muito mais. Donas de si, elas estão liderando a própria história. E nós estamos aqui para incentivar e impulsionar toda essa criatividade. A gente acredita que empreender faz parte de você. Iniciativa FATEC Senai e o Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator, junto com as mulheres mato-grossenses, impulsionando o empreendedorismo.
I'm Madhumita Sarkar Guha and I am a first-generation woman entrepreneur. I ventured into entrepreneurship with the help and support of my husband when we set up our design and architectural firm in the year 2002. During the course of my profession, I realized a lacuna in the uncovering and upholding of the artistic excellence of the weavers and craftsperson of Eastern India. This prompted me to set up Lux Living in the year 2016 after thorough research into the production and promotion of handwoven textiles and crafts in a global marketplace. As a woman entrepreneur, I have been able to empower and motivate other women on their entrepreneurial journeys in my personal as well as professional capabilities. Capacity building is key to being a successful entrepreneur, and it is a continuous and ongoing exercise. Upskilling, adapting, learning new technologies in advancing one's enterprise should be an integral part of any entrepreneur's DNA. The ITC website is a treasure trove of essential business tools for aspiring and seasoned entrepreneurs. I highly recommend the Entrepreneurship Certificate Program, which is a free resource to all my fellow entrepreneurs worldwide. These courses offer invaluable takeaways on multiple facets of doing business. I'm grateful that I was part of the ITC's workshop that was conducted on digital transformation, competitiveness and market access in India, conducted via the India SME Forum. As a benefactor of this program, I vouch for the quality of education imparted. The topics covered not only are relevant but are imperative to any entrepreneur trying to override the detrimental effects of the damage caused by the COVID to business. My main takeaway from this was to revamp and enhance my online presence and to inculcate newer digital ways to encash on this and to generate more business and do more growth in my business.
My name is Emine Erdem, and I am the president of Conditive, a non-governmental organization with a mission to support women's entrepreneurship. I am here today as the voice of many women entrepreneurs presenting UN Women's Area of Work for the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator. Women entrepreneurs face many barriers to start up and to grow businesses. And one of the main obstacles we face is access to domestic and international markets. We are strongly underrepresented in private and public procurement. The gendered impacts of corporate spending have been overlooked and underappreciated. Corporate purchasing power alone shapes diverse supply chains with the potential to make or break millions of businesses. UN Women and WEA advocates gender-responsive procurement as a strategic lever to support women's entrepreneurship, women-owned businesses, and gender-responsive businesses. Through WEA, at the global level, UN Women promotes gender-responsive procurement in the private sector through a community of practice of 350 stakeholders that showcased companies' procurement journeys. UN Women engaged 150 companies to learn the benefits to their business of carrying out gender-responsive procurement. The result was an advocacy tool, Procurement Strategic Value, Why Gender-Responsive Procurement Makes Business Sense, which establishes the evidence and business case for companies using their purchasing power to have a positive impact on gender equality within their organizations and entrepreneurial ecosystems. Complementing this, the UN Women Europe and Central Asia Regional Office increases the capacities of women entrepreneurs and the private sector to boost women's economic empowerment. This is done, firstly, through building the capacities of women entrepreneurs to compete for bidding opportunities with the public and private sector. A specialized training program provides women SMEs with the tools and resources to secure contracts in private sector markets and with the government, including through networking opportunities with key buyers at target agencies or departments. Secondly, UN Women and my organization, Conditive, target private sector companies in all economic sectors to establish and strengthen gender-responsive procurement and investment policies and practices. So, companies can buy more from women and invest in the business of the companies they are buying from. So far, this work has engaged with 73 companies which are not improving their procedures to buy from women. UN Women's support is adding value to women's participation in supply chains, facilitating better access to finance and markets, and ensuring that they are equipped with the required skills and knowledge to be competitive in the market. UN Women collaborates with all WEA UN partners and is happy to partner closely with UN Global Compact on promoting gender-responsive procurement, in particular at the global level and within local networks.
Every day, businesses across the world make decisions on who to purchase goods and services from. What if those companies use their purchasing power to advance gender equality through gender-responsive procurement? Gender-responsive procurement, or GRP, means sourcing from women-owned businesses as well as from gender-responsive businesses. And not just in the name of increased gender equality, but in the name of good business too. UN Women's report, Procurement Strategic Value, Why Gender-Responsive Procurement Makes Business Sense, shows revenues increase as procurement spend is lowered. Brand reputation can be enhanced at the same time as increasing innovation and adaptability, lowering risk, and improving service delivery. Finally, GRP can advance economic development and inclusive growth for all. Sustainable Development Goal 5 calls for all stakeholders, including business, to work collectively to remove barriers to women's empowerment and achieve gender equality by 2030. So, if you're in charge of procurement, you could ask these simple questions. Are my suppliers committed to gender equality? Have they signed the Women's Empowerment Principles founded by the UN Global Compact and UN Women? Do they have policies and practices in place to address sexual harassment and gender-based violence? Do women workers face pregnancy and/or maternity discrimination? Is there a gender pay gap? And are the specific health and safety concerns of women workers addressed? To learn more about adopting gender-responsive procurement practices, visit unglobalcompact.org/gender.
Please stay tuned for more testimonials from women entrepreneurs around the world sharing Voya's impact. And coming soon, a woman entrepreneur video series. And this series will take us to Brazil and Mexico with ILO, and China with UNDP, and Mary Kay, and Africa with ITU. And finally, I'm inviting Adriana Srishich, Chief of Multi-Stakeholder Partnership and Advisory Services of UN Women. Hi, Adriana. Previously, she has been the chief of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women for 8 years. And Adriana has over 25 years of experience in the area of human rights, and especially women's rights. And prior to joining the UN, she worked for 15 years at the International Secretary of Amnesty International in London and New Zealand as an advocacy and human rights specialist. And over to you, Adriana, for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Meral, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen and guests. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It is such a great pleasure to be here today and to have a chance to wrap up this really great event. I really congratulate all of our panelists and partners who participated. I am certainly inspired, and I have learned a lot from each of you today. I also want to start by applauding the Women's Entrepreneurship Accelerator team, our United Nations partner agencies and speakers, for excellent work and dedication in addressing two of the toughest global challenges right now that we have, which is gender equality and climate change. We have heard from our speakers many of the challenges about how we address gender equality in terms of the climate crisis. As we heard, women-owned and led micro, small, and medium enterprises are increasingly recognized as a key in providing climate solution, because also while tackling climate change is about protecting the planet, it is also about dismantling all the barriers to human progress. And this is now where I'm going, like Victor, going to go off my remarks completely. And I have to build on what he said in the context that we are living right now, and in the context of the news and the human rights crisis and the human crisis that we are experiencing and witnessing. The world is in a crisis, and women and children are suffering the most. This is why I think is even more important, and this is what should give us even more wind in our wings to accelerate this process and to accelerate our work on women's entrepreneurship. All of these millions of women, for example, will need the jobs. They will need to start their lives again.
And this is an opportunity for us to look into women's entrepreneurship, how we are supporting these women to start their own businesses and start the work and provide for their families and for their children. I myself have been a refugee in my life. I'm from Bosnia originally, and I have seen the progress and what it means when women are given opportunity after the work and after the crisis to set up their own businesses and build their families and build their children's lives. So I'm not going to take too long. I think our speakers have said everything that needs to be told about climate change and about the gender equality and how they intersect and interact, and why is it important to look at through the both lenses and bring them together on one path. But I do want to come on Elizabeth's words, where she says that we must expedite this process. And this is my call to action to all of us today. We must expedite this process. And one of the participants, I think from audience, said in the chat box that it is all about investment in the end. So for me, there are two action points for us. This is, let's expedite this process. The second is let's invest. And then to conclude with the words of one of the entrepreneurs in the video, who said that, which really struck chord with me, which says entrepreneurship is for those who roll up the sleeves. So my final message to all of us is, let's roll up the sleeves and let's roll them up even higher. Thank you. And thank you, Meral, for all the work that you have done in preparing this event. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Thank you so much. And because we are late 7 minutes, and apologies for the delay, but it was a very interesting event, I suppose, for all of us. So thank you, everyone, to all our partners and speakers and participants for joining us today. And as I said, all registrants will receive a recording. Thank you so much. Have a great day.